It's Game of the Year season once again here on Digital Foundry, and as always, I'm back with my personal favorite games of 2025. There's a lot of games released this year, so trimming this list down was not easy, but I did manage to come up with a list that I'm pretty happy with. As always, we're talking about games I personally played this year and those that very specifically resonated with me. I've been on the road a lot this year though, so there may be some big titles I'll have missed here, so I apologize in advance. There's also other games I'm still in the process of playing, like Expedition 33, which I admit is shaping up to be pretty darn great, list-worthy even, but since I still have such a long way to go, it can't make the list. So, with the rules established again, let's jump right in, starting with number 11. Released in 1989, Taito's Night Striker fused Space Harrier's speed with late 80s cyberpunk aesthetic, cementing its arcade legacy despite scarce home ports. This year's Operation Night Strikers collection finally brought it to modern platforms, but the real surprise was the sequel from M2, Night Striker Gear. Never did I imagine that Night Striker of all games would receive a proper follow-up, let alone one that stays true to the 80s original, but here we are. M2 just gets it, and Gear is actually an even better game. So, the first thing to mention is the presentation. It's beautiful. The developers opted to stick with 2D assets used to simulate a 3D space, just like the original, but modern technology means many more of these objects can be used at one time, alongside beautiful advanced effects and improved scaling. If superscaler style games had remained in vogue, this feels like a logical conclusion. The audio side is equally important, and composer Yukiharu Urita did an amazing job here. They've worked under Zuntata in the past and it shows, but they've successfully brought forth the spirit of Zuntata in this project. The mix of a more synth orchestra style music with unusual vocal tracks is extremely effective, feeling very early 90s Taito in the best way. But all of this ties into the gameplay loop. Like the original, you complete a stage and select your route via a Darius-like selector before moving on. There are fewer stages this time around, but each one is longer and more complex. Now, I love that original game, but it always felt a little bit too chaotic. Gear is a huge improvement in that sense. Bullet patterns are far more legible this time. Cheap deaths are massively cut down, the playfield itself is much wider, and there are mechanics such as the red leaders where destroying them kills a whole group, plus the whole powered up gear thing. As a result, it just feels more like a game you can actually master this time as opposed to one you just experience. It really rewards skilled play, something you'll need to reach the final area and true ending. Now, one loop of the game isn't very long, it is an arcade style game in spirit after all, but it doesn't matter. This is a game you want to keep playing and replaying as you refine your skills. Night Striker Gear is a slice of arcade perfection, which is why it comes in at number 11. Tetris is arguably the greatest puzzle game ever made, but if there had to be a number 2 slot, I might hand it to Luminous. Launched alongside the PSP in 2005, the combination of music and puzzle captivated me, unlike any puzzle game up to that point, and now the formula has been given the deluxe treatment, thanks to Luminous Arise. That's right, this is to Luminous as Tetris Effect was to Tetris, and it's wonderful. The reason? We have a perfect pairing of tight gameplay, gorgeous visual design, and extremely memorable sound. These three elements feed directly into this perfect feedback loop. You're engaged in the gameplay, but the presentation around the gameplay creates this strong emotional bond that serves to further strengthen your engagement. This is specifically where the team at Enhance really shines. They're experts of building these experiences out of existing genres that elicit emotions you otherwise might not find. And with support for VR, you can even take it to a whole new level. It's all very cool. Now, the thing is, we've had several different sequels to Luminous over the years, and they're all pretty good, but none of them really captured my attention quite like the original PSP game. They all felt very iterative. Luminous Arise is the first time that I've felt that pull of the original since 2005. This is an actual evolution of the concept. As I alluded to then, the presentation is a huge part of this game, and thankfully the visuals around it are a real treat. A noticeable step up from Tetris Effect. This time the team shifted over to the Unity engine, and it has allowed them to create some surprisingly beautiful scenes. There's so many weird shapes and background elements that await you on this journey, and some of them even contribute directly to the challenge. When you're fully engulfed in the game, it's really difficult to stop playing. Then there's the sound, and the sound is arguably the most important thing here. The whole concept of Luminous is that it combines the dropping of shapes into a playfield with the movement of this bar, which basically represents the tempo of the music. So they've basically infused music directly into what is an otherwise basic puzzle game. When you play this on a proper sound setup, it is truly immersive, an absolute gem. All of this comes together then to cement its place at number 10. Is this the year of retro or what? I'm starting to think so, and I apologize to those that only want to play the latest AAA games, because you're not going to find much of that here on my list, but honestly, games like Shinobi Art of Vengeance very specifically serve as an example of what I personally love about games in general. So, this is a series I hold near and dear for starters. Revenge of Shinobi and Shinobi 3 especially, back on the Genesis, are among my favorite action games of all time. They deliver this perfect rhythm, move, jump, attack, games that reward precision in every move. They're so satisfying to master. Some of the newer attempts have also been interesting, but they've never quite grabbed my attention the same way. Art of Vengeance manages to change that. This is an outstanding take on the franchise that both feels true to the original ethos, but also expands the design outward. But the reason it's a success is that even though it is expanded outward, this is not, and I repeat, not a Metroidvania. That's right, it's still a stage-by-stage action game divided up by this world map of sorts. The thing is though, each stage is huge, and it does reward some exploration. Plus, you can return to them later with new power-ups to find items you may have missed. A very Metroidvania concept, but the key here is that none of them are directly tied together. They're all their own unique stage. And I think that makes for better pacing that suits Shinobi. Since they're not interconnected, this allows every stage in the game to feel very different from the last. Sometimes you have different action scenes like this, sometimes a stage might be more exploratory, other times you're just running through and attacking dudes along the way. Sometimes you're sequestered into a small arena and need to take everyone out. Other times you're just fighting them as you move through the level. It's this fine line between all these different styles that really works for me. That's really the key here. The game is constantly mixing things up. Combined with the ultra-tight controls, it all really shines. The moveset is easy to pick up, but surprisingly deep and expandable. But the game design alone isn't what carries it. Shinobi is also a gorgeous game, with a very unique art design. The game really looks quite unlike anything else out there, aside from resembling some of Lizard Cube's prior works, but even then, it's still pretty unique. I adore great pixel art, as you'll see in this very list, but it's really cool to see a game adopt such a painterly aesthetic and do it so well. Combine that with an amazing soundtrack courtesy of T. Lopes and Yuzo Koshiro, who worked on Revenge of Shinobi back in the day, and you have something very memorable indeed. All of this comes together to create a game that I could not help but include in my list, which is why it comes in at number 9. The 2025 Retro Assault continues, and this time we have another banger on tap, Neon Inferno. Developed by a relative new studio to the scene, with much of the staff having only other worked on their prior game Steel Assault, Neon Inferno shows that they've learned a lot. It's one of the tightest action games in recent memory. The thing is, pixel art action games are a dime a dozen these days, so standing out is extremely difficult. What separates this one from the pack is exceptionally good art design and rewarding, tightly designed play mechanics with some very good stage design. So it starts as a basic side-scrolling shooter. You jump, dash, and shoot your way across the initial stage until this happens. Suddenly, you have the option of shooting into the background. What they've done here basically is combine both a run-and-gun shooter with something closer to Natsume's Wild Guns, and the fusion really works well. Once you get into the groove of things, it has a similar rhythm to another favorite of mine, Hunt Down, but ratchets up the presentation even further. There's just so much energy in every stage, and the showdowns themselves are downright epic. Combine this with a killer soundtrack and vibes for days, and you have a game that you'll want to keep playing and replaying. The pixel art is also some of the best I've seen in a long time, even if the main character looks like a Jin Kazama cosplayer. Seriously, the amount of detail poured into every sprite and background is simply jaw-dropping. There's pixel art, and then there's this. Basically, if you enjoy these sorts of games at all, you really owe it to yourself to play Neon Inferno. It's just that good, which is why it comes in at number 8. If Neon Inferno answers the question about what's possible with pixel art on a modern machine, Eartheon takes the opposite approach, embracing the limitations of a 16-bit console from the 80s, the Sega Mega Drive. Now, the homebrew scene on Sega's system has become huge in recent years, but this is among the first examples I can think of where a prominent creator from its original era has returned to create something new. That's the case here with Ancient and Yuzo Koshiro, who, along with his partner Wada-san, have returned to make arguably the best horizontal shooter on the system. And that's saying a lot because the Mega Drive has a great library of shooters. Creating such a game is no easy task. Beyond the core mechanics, the flow of the stage, the scoring system, the weapons, and general progression through it really need to captivate the players strongly enough to keep them coming back. Eartheon's level design, progression, and bullet patterns are all top tier. You can get through the game by the skin of your teeth, but learning it yields even better results. These types of games are never very long, but they are designed to keep you coming back until you master them, and Eartheon accomplishes this with just the right stage length and complexity. It knows just when to push the player a little harder, as well as when to pull back. Then you have the visual design. Thanks to the larger ROM size, they're able to use some very detailed pixel art throughout the game, including these huge ships. And it all runs at a perfect 60 frames per second with no issue. The cherry on top, of course, is Yuzo Koshiro's musical score, which is just tremendous. Honestly, looking across the library, only games like Thunder Force 4 or Battlemania Daiginjo really come close to matching Eartheon. It really is that good. As a result then, I had to include it here on my list at number 7. Metroid Prime 4A, I can already hear the reactions. Look, I've read the reviews, I get it. There's issues with this game, and I agree with some of them. Yet when I step back and consider my time playing through Prime 4, I can't pretend that I didn't absolutely adore what I experienced. The thing is, the original Metroid Prime stands among my favorite games of all time. Prime 4 is not on that level, but at the same time, what's still here resonated with me a big way. There simply aren't a lot of games created like this. And when you're down there engaging with the mechanics, taking out enemies and solving problems, it all just kind of works. I love that feeling of movement, the shooting, the level design, and the overall game flow. Even with the criticisms in mind, I found it all extremely compelling all the way through. It really helped me understand just how much I value things such as basic game feel. Everything you do in this game feels good. The big shift in design this time centers on the controversial desert area, which is a central hub of sorts. With distance though, it kind of reminds me of the 2008 version of Prince of Persia. There's not much to do out here, but it works for me. While I would have preferred something more tightly integrated, I found it to be a nice breath of fresh air between each of the 5 zones, and I never really took issue with the pacing. Blasting across the dunes just feels good, and shooting the occasional enemy in Panzer Dragoon style works for me as well. But of course, it's the main 5 areas that really shine. They're all pretty excellent in terms of design, if a little more linear than classic Metroid. I especially loved the Icy Research Center, where once you reactivate the generator in the basement, everything begins to melt and it comes back to life in a dramatic fashion. There's nothing really new about the game's aesthetic and themes, but the execution and scale is immense, and it creates a compelling atmosphere that feels very specifically Metroid. Fundamentally though, the combination of precise control and player movement is what kept me super engaged here. The second you pick up the controller, everything just feels right. For me, this is so critical to the enjoyment of a game, and Prime 4 really nails it. In addition, Retro Studios did a fantastic job with the presentation side. The technology is rock solid, delivering gorgeous visuals at a stable 60 or 120 FPS if you choose. The HDR is also beautiful, not to mention you have an excellent soundtrack throughout. In all, is Metroid Prime 4 a flawed game? Sure, I can understand why it didn't work for everyone, but for me, it's just what I needed in 2025. I really had a great time playing through it. It's a very memorable game. That's why I felt it needed to come in at number 6. If there's one thing I love about modern day id Software, beyond their technology of course, it's their willingness to evolve, even within a single IP. id Software has released 3 Doom games over the past 10 years now, and while certain themes persist, such as the Doom Slayer himself, each of these 3 games are extremely different from one another. The downside is that it can take time for a game like this to click if you've become accustomed to a previous entry, especially when the bar is as high as it was. That's the case with The Dark Ages. When I first sampled it, I did enjoy it a lot, but then I spent a bit more time with it and I felt a tinge of disappointment versus Doom Eternal. But then I recalled, I also felt similarly about Eternal versus 2016 initially. When I went back to Eternal though and did a complete nightmare run, it became one of my favorite shooters of all time. While it may not quite match the adrenaline-fueled perfection that is Doom Eternal, I'm happy to say that I've come back around and realized I love Doom the Dark Ages. It's a fantastic game. It just needed some time to grow. So firstly, the mechanics have shifted to a more up-close and personal style, as opposed to the high-flying antics of Eternal. It has its own rhythm though, focused on shields, both the player shield and those of the enemy. Wearing down foes, tossing the shield, locking on, flying across the map to slam into someone, all of this stuff is a blast. Plus, you have a lot of great weapons at your disposal. Dark Ages presents new types of enemy patterns versus other recent Doom games, but the size of the groups marks the first time we've seen hordes similar in number to the original 90s Doom games. Remember, it was easy to throw around a lot of demons when they were just sprites, but once we moved to polygons with Quake, we never saw a subsequent id game with crowds like that original Doom, until now. Learning how to most effectively and quickly destroy these hordes then is where the fun lies, and I love it. This is then combined with a huge range of levels, and many of them are quite different from one another. You have the more traditional designs, which involves exploring large areas, finding keys to unlock doors, and sort of puzzling your way from beginning to end. There's also these larger semi-open world areas, which turned out to be pretty cool, and the dragon and robot stuff, which is not my favorite in the game, but I've come to enjoy them somewhat, especially later in the game. It's also a gorgeous game from top to bottom, and one that runs like a dream. There's a reason it was our #1 pick for graphics of the year in 2025. The thing is though, when I look back across my PC library, I always maintain a handful of classic shooters on my SSDs that I enjoy loading up for a quick round or two. It goes back to older games like Doom, Quake, Blood and the like, as well as Doom Eternal and other more recent games. I've now added Doom the Dark Ages to that rotation, which says a lot I think, which is why it comes in at number 5. I admit it, I've always been a fan of the works of Hideo Kojima. From his early adventure games through Metal Gear and beyond, there's just something that has always resonated with me. I felt the same way with Death Stranding some years ago, and now we have its sequel, On the Beach. Strange title aside, DS2 ended up becoming one of the coolest games of the year, expanding upon everything I loved about the original Death Stranding, but amping it up in some fun new ways. Some of those ways may have turned off original fans even, but that's what I love about Kojima games, the surprise. At its core though, DS2 is fundamentally a continuation of that original, but with expanded mechanics and superior level design, I would say. You're still playing the role of Sam Porter Bridges, crossing huge swaths of land to deliver goods, while dealing with threats and challenges along the way, often of the unexpected variety. Much of the challenge lies in the terrain itself, the need to prepare for your journey, and handling any unexpected encounters is what really defines the fun. I talked about this in my review, but there's missions where things just play out in ways that feel truly emergent. Moments where you can say run out of fuel with no way to recharge, and then you have to devise your own way to get the cargo to the finish line. Contrasted against the game's world, it can create some very impressive moments. Now, it's true that the mystery of the original game is somewhat absent here, due to this being a sequel, I'd say. But that's where the over-the-top storytelling comes into play. Things are even wilder this time around, and while it has its shortcomings, the story remains a strong point for me that grabbed me throughout the entire game. In addition, you have a stunning presentation with gorgeous art direction, excellent technical execution, and of course, a brilliant soundscape. Everything supporting the experience elevates it, creating something that sticks with you long after you've put it down. That's why it comes in at number 4. Between Shinobi and 3 different Ninja Gaiden games, 2025 is packed with a lot of ninja action, but what I didn't expect is that my favorite Gaiden game this year would be the side-scrolling entry, Ragebound. Yet, here we are. Ragebound is, quite honestly, one of the best side-scrolling action games of the last decade. The Game Kitchen has seriously cooked here with this one, creating something that feels like a perfect fusion between classic and modern design. Like Shinobi, Ragebound is not a Metroidvania, instead focusing on individual stages selectable from a world map. But what's extra interesting here is the way in which it progresses, adding in new characters and moves in a way that drastically alters the way you play the game. It starts simple enough with basic moves, but eventually you take control of another character and the two end up merging for story reasons, gaining the abilities of both in the process. Level design gradually expands to take advantage of all these mechanics, and it just executes on them perfectly. I love how the game's various mechanics are so tightly integrated with the level design. Using projectiles to extend your jump, for instance, feels amazing, and there's a power-up where killing a gleaming foe lends you extra power for your next attack, requiring planning and prioritization to take out enemies in the most efficient way possible. The action here really is just incredible. Arguably the best side-scrolling Ninja Gaiden game ever made. Really, it's that good. The level design then is built to perfectly utilize each of these skills in a way that always feels satisfying. Plus the visuals, my goodness, I expected no less from the team behind Blasphemous, but seriously, this is just perfection. Some of the best looking pixel art I've seen in a long time. So yeah, I love Ninja Gaiden Ragebound. It's a near perfect action game, a peak of the genre, and something anyone that enjoys classic ninja action games really needs to try for themselves, which is why it's number 3. This list has a lot of 2D platform games on it, so how about some 3D action to break it up? That's where Donkey Kong Bonanza comes in. This is the latest from the team behind Super Mario Odyssey, and it's a banger. One of this year's biggest titles for Nintendo Switch 2. DK Bonanza offers a unique fusion between classic Nintendo platforming action and fresh new ideas courtesy of its voxel-driven destruction engine. Playing as DK, you'll slowly make your way deeper into the planet, stopping at different layers along the way, with each one representing a specific world type. Some are traditional, others are a bit more unique, but all of them share one thing: they're extremely destructible. Using voxelized terrain, DK can rip and tear through the world, revealing the underlying skeleton within. I was concerned this might result in an unfocused experience, but that's not the case. Each level is expertly crafted with these abilities in mind. And that's no small feat. This is a game where the player can basically destroy most of the visible level and climb just about any surface. You have near absolute freedom, which risks making the stages boring, yet somehow the design is handled in just the right way to ensure that it stays coherent and interesting even if you tear it all apart. In addition, the game is rich in atmosphere, something the DK series became known for thanks to Rare, and Pauline as a character is delightful. Watching the duo make their way across the world is extremely enjoyable. It's very fun. Conceptually speaking, I also love the idea of diving even deeper into the planet's core, and the late game reveals are a lot of fun too. On top of all that, the game looks and sounds fantastic. Running at a mostly stable 60 frames per second, each area is huge and nicely designed with lots of appealing colors and strong silhouettes. The music too doesn't disappoint, not an easy thing given the quality of the music in DK's prior adventures. All in all, DK offers great platforming action, memorable boss battles, and gorgeous stage design with an amazing all-around presentation. That's why it comes in at number 2. Now, usually at this point in the video, I drop in my retro game of the year, and this year, it turned out that Goemon stole my heart again with the 3rd game on Super Famicom. Rather than going into it in this video, you can hear me talk all about that and more on the year-end episode of the DF Retro Super Show, episode 4. But hey, let's go ahead and jump into number 1. When it was announced that the next game from Guard Crush, creators of Streets of Rage 4, would be a roguelike, I was admittedly disappointed. In fact, I didn't even play the game right away once it released. But when I eventually sat down with it, I quickly realized this is a masterpiece. It's not that Absalom is just a great game, rather, it's the next step in the brawler genre. Alright, so conceptually, we've seen many of the elements in this game before, of course. Brawling is what these guys do best, and that's been done to death. But Absalom also features elements reminiscent of Vanillaware's Dragon's Crown, as well as stuff like Hades. Also, not really original at this point. But it's the way in which everything comes together that really makes it work. So, at its core, there's the brawling mechanics themselves, and this is where games like Dragon's Crown, as good as it is, falls a little short. In my opinion, Streets of Rage 4 is the best technical brawler ever made, and Absalom is built on that foundation, ensuring that the key actions are remarkably satisfying. The hits, grapples, and special attacks all stand tall next to the best games in the genre. Even without anything extra, just as a straightforward brawler, this would still be a killer game. But it's the roguelike element that sets it apart, and this is the part I was so unsure of. But it works. Firstly, it solves one of the issues that these games often face, credit feeding your way through to the end, which can be rather boring. In Absalom, each attempt is basically one life. Fail and your journey ends, you gotta redo it. This ensures that you play seriously each time, learning the mechanics and level design in the process, and with multiple routes, I found this quite engaging. It really felt like you were taking a journey across this land. And this is where the other roguelike stuff comes in. Rolling different results can alter your build each time you play. And I was worried about this too, but it turns out it just adds a nice spice that complements your own skills more than anything else. It's true, some builds might fare better against later foes, you can get lucky, but by and large, it still relies on your skills as a brawler. The thing is though, when you put it all together, everything just works so darn well in a way that I wasn't really prepared for. It's one of those games where saying just one more run turns into 2 or 3 hours easily. But it's not just this part that works. As per the pillars of brawling that I defined in the past, you need an appropriately meaty impact and animation set, which is beautifully satisfied here. And of course, a gorgeous art style to go along with it, which this has in spades. The backgrounds and character designs are universally awesome, super sharp and clean with excellent use of color and shadow. Plus it all runs on their own engine, not just Unity or Unreal, just like Streets of Rage 4. The third pillar, the soundtrack, is also satisfied. This time they worked with Gareth Coker, composer of the Ori series, to bring the soundscape to life, and it's magnificent. Take a listen. So yeah, Absalom is the real deal. This is a case where if you enjoy brawlers but were worried about those roguelike elements, don't be. It's absolutely worth playing regardless. And if you do like roguelites, well, even better. For myself though, as of the start of 2025, I'd never even heard the name Absalom, and even at release, I was in no rush to play it. That was a mistake. Absalom reaches new heights for the brawling genre, and it's just a brilliant video game all around. That's why it's my #1 pick for 2025. With that though, we've reached the end of yet another year. Hard to believe I've been doing these Game of the Year videos for so long now, but I hope you at least enjoyed seeing what caught my attention this year. What will 2026 hold? We'll find out soon enough. Until then though, this is John signing off for the year.